You're tuning in to Financial Fitness Northwest live on 1150 KKNW. We provide our listeners with information from business professionals to bring solutions to your daily life and local charities to provide you with the opportunities to give back to your community as well. And today we are here in studio with Keith Beach from the Jennifer Beach Foundation. Keith is the founder and the executive director of the Jennifer Beach Foundation, a community-based advocacy agency providing help to victims of child abuse and domestic violence in King and Pierce County since 2001. He has over 30 years of experience in the private industry working with several Fortune 500 companies in the areas of accounting, finance, and business development. Keith has served on the board of the King County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, has been a member of the Covington Coalition Against Domestic Violence since 2006, and is a past chairman of the Covington Economic Development Council. Welcome, Keith.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Patricia.
Oh, we're so happy to have you.
Yes, we are. So can you just, start off by telling us how did the Jennifer Beach Foundation come about?
Well, it's something that you just listed, kind of my background, which never would have entertained being involved in domestic violence advocacy. And this is just a turn of events that happened with my daughter, Jennifer, who several years ago met a little girl who had been abused. That little girl had been abused by her mother, as evidenced by some of the bruises from being hit with a coat hanger. Jen was a pretty proactive young lady, tried to get help for this little girl, was unsuccessful at that time, but we knew the family of that little girl convinced Jennifer that we would keep an eye and see if anything would happen. At that time, she was a junior at Redmond High School, and she was in an honors English class. And as a finals assignment for that class, she wrote a poem called Bruised Inside and Out from the perspective of that little girl. We didn't know Jen had written that poem, and on the last day of her junior year, on her way coming home from school, Jennifer was killed in a car accident. As we were going through the things in her car, we found the poem that had been returned. And the only words in the poem that we've changed is Jennifer named the mother of this little girl, Mrs. So-and-so, and now that's in there just as mother. And I was pretty naive then about domestic violence and about child abuse and things, but I thought, well, maybe if this lady would read Jennifer's words, maybe it would make a difference in some kind. So I called her and went over, and reading the poem helped her see her actions outside of herself. And it moved her to go to counseling. And at that time, she had a 10-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So it was kind of cool that something that Jennifer started while she was still with us continued to help people after she was gone. She was a very caring young person that was involved in lots of things in the community. So it was neat that we were able to carry that forward.
Wow, that is incredible story.
Yeah, that really is.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you have just created such a great legacy, with what you've done from the foundation. So why the work that has been done by the foundation? Why is it important to you?
Well, the obvious thing is it keeps me connected with Jen. It also is, there's never enough resources. It's kind of interesting. There are some very large domestic violence advocate groups that are here in King County that have been here for a long time. They do a bunch of tremendous work, but there never seems to be enough. There never seems to be enough advocates, enough housing, enough resources for motel vouchers, those kind of things. So it's important that we kind of can fill a little bit of that gap up. But most importantly, I think for me, it's helping some of the folks that are our clients believe that there's hope for them. They spend so much time looking backwards at what has happened, what's got them to where they are, that it's sometimes hard for them to break through and see that there's still a whole lot of time for them to get enjoyment out of life. I'll give you an example. Hope and Power is a class that we do that deals with financial literacy, an area of life that was often controlled by somebody else in their life, where they had to leave situations without very much resource. It's a class that we do once a week for 10 weeks. We had a woman in class one time, and one of the topics we have to talk about, and you guys in the business that you are, is we talk about net worth. And oftentimes it's a very difficult subject because many of our clients have a negative net worth for a bunch of reasons you talked about earlier, whether it's medical bills or legal bills or whatever the thing is, it's negative. So it becomes a very emotional thing. And I noticed in one of our classes, this one lady named Lisa, we were talking about it, and she started having a tear come from one of her eyes. And I stopped for a second, and I realized that we had to make sure that we were talking about numbers on a piece of paper and not the value of a person. So we talked about that a little bit, about her worth as a mom, as a daughter, as a friend, and that all this is just a piece of paper. And she says, well, I don't think I can do this. I don't think, and I knew her well enough, and the class had been going on long enough. I said, wait a minute. You got up today, you took a shower, you drove your car here, you chatted with some people. You're more than capable to do any of the things that we're going to do here in this class. And then she started crying from both eyes. And I'm going, what did I say wrong here? And she looked up and she said, nobody. She said, you're the first person that has ever told me I was capable of doing anything. And she sat down and we finished the class. And like 6 months later, she called me and she was just beaming with enthusiasm because she had had a book of her poems published.
Wow.
And it was kind of cool, from somebody that was about ready to give up on life to doing cool things. So if one of the things we can do is help people see that no matter the sometimes really horrific situations people have been through, that there's still hope for enjoyment in the future, individually, with maybe a new partner, with their children. So that's what's really important.
Wow. Okay. You're making me cry a lot, so I'm going to try my best over here. But you're just a builder of people. I can see why your daughter was so special, because you're her dad. But can you share a little bit about what other programs and things the foundation does?
Yeah, we try. Like I mentioned, some of the other big groups that have been around since the feminist days, the end of the 70s, early 80s, they're really great at doing lots of things, but they're really great at doing things like seeking funding, legislation for new laws and all that. So we don't have to do that. I'm a very practical-based kind of person. So we said, what can we do? What can we give a person that comes to see us that when they leave, they have something they didn't have before? So the primary thing that we do is advocacy-based counseling, safety planning, those kind of things to help people. Oftentimes it's interesting, and it kind of blew me away because I was an accountant in another life and very practical and very analytical, that sometimes just to have somebody listen to you is an important thing. And in our world where there's so many people dealing with this issue and not always enough people to answer, and our clients will sometimes go through many calls before somebody actually returns a call to them or somebody picks up. So by being able to be there for that works out really well. We do our Hope and Power class like I talked about. We do a teen dating violence class that has come out of the state coalition, a program where a young lady here in Washington State was killed in a murder-suicide. And it's a role-playing exercise that we do with adults and we do with teens, which has turned out to be pretty cool. We do a program called Kids Club, which is our mission with Kids Club is to help kids that have been raised in a domestic violent environment see that there's healthier behavior than to hurt somebody or break something when they get angry or frustrated. We know from just viewing life that domestic violence has a tendency to repeat itself from generation to generation. And I'll give you an example of, I saw this video in 2007, and I can still see it in my mind vividly right now. A doctor from Multicare had invited me to go to a presentation he was doing for other doctors and nurses because they're mandatory reporters. And in that presentation, he had a video of a woman who was literally laying on her kitchen floor, and her little 3-year-old comes walking in and starts kicking her because that's what Daddy was doing. And at that moment, that adult perpetrator may never have an opportunity for that person to ever get his life straightened out. But the little kid, the little 3-year-old, if we could help that kid see that there's better behavior than that. So we have a licensed mental health therapist that works with the kids. In that program, the Kids Club program, the non-offending parent, which in our situation over the last 10 years has always been a mom. That isn't always the case, but the non-offending parent has to participate. So we have a licensed mental health therapist that works with the kids. I, as a domestic advocate, work with the moms, and we work through those issues. We do some things with community partners. We also do some things with a couple new programs that we have coming up.
Wow. What didn't we just, I can't remember what charity we had on talking about abuse, and they said boys that are abused as children are twice as likely to abuse as adults.
Yeah. It's hard. You see people that repeat the same pattern because we're never going to get to everything we have here.
No, we're not.
But I want to share one more story. There's a program here called Dawn. You had somebody from LifeWire on not too long ago. Those are two groups that have been some of the long-standing big groups in here, and they're good. I went to a 50-hour training class at Dawn to get some background and training in domestic violence advocacy. And when I was there, I met a woman that was there that we had a break one day, and she's sitting next to me, and she's maybe in her 30s, African-American lady, pretty lady, and people went for coffee, and I was still sitting there, and we just started chatting. And, you ask all the questions, where are you from, where you live, and all that. And she said something about, are you married? And I said, well, yeah. And I said, are you? And she says, no, and I never will be again. And I'm going, what? I don't get it. And I was very naive still then. And I said, help me understand. And she said, well, I didn't realize it, but when I was a kid, my grandfather was abusive to my mother. My father was, to my grandmother. My father was abusive to my mother. I've had 2 adult relationships, and they've both been abusive, so I'm just not going to do it anymore. And me and my naive Greenway, I said, wait a minute. You're a pretty woman. You're young. You have all kinds. How can you give up this intimate partner, this person you can rely on, this special person in your life for the rest of your life? I said, why don't you just change your list of what's important to you in a person? And she goes, well, I guess I never thought of it that way. But it's because it goes from cycle to cycle, and we don't break out of it.
Yeah.
So to have somebody or to have groups like ours or the other groups that can kind of help people, it takes a lot of courage to leave a situation that you're in for many, many reasons. We wrote an article recently with the help of the State Coalition about why people don't leave. When you're not in that situation and you don't see it, but you hear about it and you go, well, why don't you just get the hell out of there? Why are you putting up with that? There's many reasons. There's tens and tens of reasons. But the common ones are like, well, financial, number one. Somebody leaves. The average woman that is leaving, or the average person leaving a domestic violence situation will leave 5 to 7 times before they can break away for good.
Wow.
They haven't oftentimes asked for help, but they haven't. But there are kids that may be involved. Oftentimes one person is the breadwinner. The other person that is trying to leave and break out of this and find a safer place in life doesn't know where to go, doesn't want to do. There's immigration issues sometimes. Some people hold that over people. You leave me, I'm going to report you, those kind of things. But most importantly, people don't want to admit failure. People don't want to say, but I still love him. If he would just fix, if this or that would just get fixed.
They think they can fix them or something.
And I have to explain to people all the time, if that person wants to get fixed and you want to be by their side, well, hopefully he does that and hopefully you can take care of things. But otherwise, it's never going to happen unless that person decides they have an issue and they want to work on it. But it works the other way too. Perpetrators they'll prey on the sympathy of the victims. Oh, but I love you. Oh, but I didn't mean to do it. Oh, that I'm sorry. Oh, it really wasn't me. And in the heat of the battle, it's, well, why did you make me do that? Well, that person did it themselves. So
isn't it kind of too, the person that is being abused, their self-worth becomes so low. I've read like they don't feel like anyone else will love them, or maybe they don't deserve to be loved. They sort of take it on in some cases. And
Patricia, that's a really good question, because when we deal with teens, and you think of teens growing up, and how you're always kind of awkward, and do you really have a lot of friends? Do you not have friends? Is it tough at home? You can't get what you want. Mom and dad don't understand you. All those kind of things, and especially young girls, which bugs me today about schools, because we've gone from the old traditional junior high to high schools now, including 14-year-old girls as ninth graders, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th in there, with 18-year-old young men. And so you've got a young lady like that is looking for somebody in their life to give them a little attention, to give them a little, and here comes somebody that's more controlling, more want to exert their power over them, want to isolate them from their friends, want to get whatever they can physically from them. And this person is, do whatever you want to do to me. You're the only one showing me any care and concern. And
attention is attention, right? Even if it's negative, it's something. And if they're not getting any attention otherwise.
Yeah. And that happens often in the adult world too. If somebody's struggling through life and I just spoke to a client 2 days ago that ended up leaving home when she was 14, got involved in a gang situation, really, really serious and ugly stuff. But that gang became her family.
Wow.
So you put up with the abuse. You put, in today's world, human trafficking is a huge deal, and it's not
crazy.
There's human trafficking in labor, but we think of it in sexual things and how young kids get hooked up in that, because there was a family that somebody was kind of showing them some love, but it really wasn't genuine love.
Right.
They don't know the difference.
No, they don't. So how can people find you? How do people find out about the things you can do to help them?
Well, we're members of the state coalition, the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We're members of it used to be called the King County Coalition. It's now called the Coalition Against Gender-Based Violence. We're members of the Covington Domestic Violence Task Force. So we do things in the community. But one of the biggest challenges we have, and I think even the bigger groups sometimes, is raising awareness that we exist and that people are there to help and people are there not to judge. All of our services are free. We're listed on 211, so King County Crisis Line people can call. We just had somebody call me from the courthouse, from the King County Regional Justice Center, because our primary facility is in Kent. And she said, a woman walked up, and she was just getting a protection order. She said, it's like a mystery woman because she can't tell me who it is. She said, a woman walked up to me and gave me one of your cards. And I don't know where it came from. And we're always kind of looking for if somebody can refer it. And then another program called Mama's Hands, which helps people with housing, and not necessarily domestic, but housing. And many of their clients have to deal with that. Said a woman from there also referred her to us. So it's kind of word of mouth, kind of like what your prior guests were saying. If you've been around a little bit of time, then people know, and then they send people to you, which is a sign that hopefully we're doing the right thing more times than not.
So what do you guys need for help? I mean, do you guys need donations? What can people do to get involved and help support the Jennifer Beach Foundation?
In the nonprofit world, we're always, seeking funding. We went from, because we try and be the stopgap between the larger groups that offer shelter. We don't have shelter or housing programs, but we can make referrals to them. So oftentimes I used to think in $50 bites, because I could put a family, a mom and some kids, or even a single woman in a motel in a safe place with a warm bed and a bath for $50. Well, now it's more like $75 and stuff like that. So there's always that kind of thing, and things for supplies. We do things. I just helped a lady 2 days ago because she came to visit us. Her muffler fell off. Her muffler fell off. She's showing me pictures of her 15-year-old daughter watching her as she's trying to put it back with a coat hanger. And so I didn't let her stay at her office. She came for a Hope and Power class. I said, get in the car. And we went down to an automotive place, and we paid $125 to have them put a pipe and to weld it on. And so those kind of things people don't think about. There's a bunch of stuff like that. We always could use volunteers. As I'm a techno idiot, as I shared with Patricia earlier. I just got rid of my flip phone. But we have people that know technical stuff. People, I mean, even things things like Outlook and that could help us. We have about a dozen volunteers that help us with the program. We have one part-time paid employee, Anna Miller, who does a great job supporting things I do. I'm the only advocate that's in our group right now, but we work with a lot of other groups. So we have a place right now where we could use somebody that's outgoing like all of you folks here that help us do a little bit of outreach in the community.
Okay. Well, great. I'm sure we can, we're going to put all your guys' information on the website so anyone can find you and get involved. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Keith. Thank you for tuning into Financial Fitness Northwest. When we come back from the break, we're going to have the Riley Johnson team market update and discussing the cost of closing a loan and what you can expect.